Hi everyone, I'm Josh. I'm going to be responding to Baltimore's claim that the death penalty has failed as a deterrent against violent crime in the United States. His secondary claims are: 1, experts are not convinced of a deterrent effect from the death penalty. Number 2, the death penalty is not an effective method of lowering crime rates. And number 3, studies showing a deterrent effect from the death penalty are flawed. I'd like to begin by quoting Daniel S. Nagin, a PhD, Professor of Public Policy and Statistics at Carnegie Mellon University, and John V. Pepper, PhD, Professor of Economics at the University of Virginia. They wrote in their 2012 book, Deterrence and the Death Penalty: research to date of the effect of capital punishment on crime is not informative about whether capital punishment decreases, increases, or has no effect on crime rates. Therefore, they recommend that these studies not be used to inform deliberations requiring judgments about the effect of the death penalty on crime rates. Consequently, claims that research demonstrates that capital punishment decreases or increases the crime rate by a specified amount or has no effect on the crime rate should not influence judgments about capital punishment. Let me give you a little brief summary of what I just quoted. Basically, these two professors said that we cannot correlate the death penalty as a deterrent against violent crime in the United States. So his first secondary claim said that experts are not convinced of a deterrent effect from the death penalty. I'm not sure if his evidence really supports his claim. He says that the vast majority of the world's top criminologists believe that research has demonstrated that the perceived deterrence of effect from the death penalty is wrong. I mean, if the world's top criminologists say that the evidence that either supports or denies deterrence is wrong, I mean, how can we really trust any statistic that's brought up in his arguments? And basically, if they're not convinced that it has an effect or doesn't have an effect, we cannot say that the death penalty has either succeeded or failed as a deterrent against violent crime in the United States. Going on to his second secondary claim, that sounds weird. He said that the death penalty is not an effective method of lowering violent crime rates. The chart that he references to in his bibliography and that he references to in his speech has either faulty information or math. For example, that chart states that in 2010, states with a death penalty had a murder rate of 5%, and states without a death penalty had a murder rate of 4.01%. If we do the math, that percentage difference is 1%. The chart then says, though, however, that the percent difference between the two is rather 25%. I mean, yes, if you put those numbers into a percent difference chart, yeah, you'll get a percent difference of 25%. But that equation is to be used with real concrete numbers, not with actual percentages. Because these statistics are presented in percentage form, the real average difference between states with and without the penalty is a mere 1%, as I stated before. On that same page, there is a chart that compares individual states' murder rates. The range of states that have, the range of murder rates for the non-death penalty states is just as wide as the murder rates for the death penalty states, meaning that we don't really know whether the penalty has failed, the death penalty has failed, or has been successful in the past, which supports what I said in response to the first claim. In essence, the data that he presented gives no real conclusion to whether the death penalty is or is not an effective method of lowering violent crime rates. Just another response to his second secondary claim. His second piece of evidence is dated around 13 years ago. It says that homicide rates have not declined any more than in states that instated the death penalty than in states that did not. We can trust this evidence if we ignore the fact that it's dated, but because I stated before that we can't trust any statistic that's brought up, we can't trust any evidence at all. Therefore, we do not know if the death penalty is or isn't an effective method of lowering violent crime rates. His third secondary claim states that studies showing that a deterrent effect from the death penalty are flawed. His third claim actually helps my refutation. Again, his supporting claim states that studies showing a deterrent effect from the death penalty are flawed. I just said it again. His evidence is sound, but how can this supporting claim support his main claim? I mean, if he presents a bunch of information and then says that that information is flawed, I mean, that kind of refute to some claim. Basically, I'm just saying that we don't know whether or not the death penalty has either failed or succeeded as a deterrent against violent crime in the United States. Thanks.
All right, Josh, all of the organizational stuff is relatively clear. At the beginning, you basically have a piece of information that you're going to use as the standard for measuring all the other arguments in the debate, and that's the Nagin and Pepper statement from their book that says, all the research to date, we can't reach a conclusion one way or the other about whether it is effective or whether it is ineffective. That's the key piece of information because all of your arguments are now premised on that data, assuming that that is correct. And it's an interesting approach to take because instead of making a counterclaim arguing that for the effectiveness of the death penalty, you're just arguing that we don't have data that would allow us to conclude that it was ineffective or effective. So you've got a very narrow range in which you're arguing on the advocate's position. And that's potentially a dangerous spot to be in because you're kind of splitting hairs on the question of whether or not the death penalty has an impact. And the hair that you're splitting is just dependent on that one particular set of authors who have reached this conclusion. Now, I don't know what the basis of their conclusion was, whether they reviewed all death penalty studies that had ever been done, what the general criticism was. I do know that on that last point where you are basically taking the advocate's own point and suggesting that the research that's found that the death penalty does deter is flawed, you in essence say, well, it shows that this kind of research is flawed. It only shows that it's research, the research is flawed in the direction that the advocate was talking about. I don't know that that really substantiates your point, although I understand the way you're trying to reason there. I think that's, like I said, a little bit of a presumption that you're making. On the second point, when you go into this whole discussion of murder rates and the comparisons between the states, it's very difficult to follow the statistical information that you're presenting and be able to make the inference that you want us to make. So I thought that was a little bit problematic. The summary, though, at the end basically explains the issue, and like I said, it puts it all on that one quote that you have before you get to those particular arguments. If we were having this as a debate, I would imagine that then the rest of a substantial part of the rest of the debate would focus on that particular research and whether or not it is capable of getting to the conclusion or it's fair to make the generalization about all death penalty research based on that. All right, thank you.